talk about the global campaign before. It's very, very regional, very Tasmanian. A good deal more for a good deal less. This was the slogan adopted by my father, a car salesman and motor vehicle enthusiast, when he established his used car business in Launceston, Tasmania in 1954. In a novel twist for the times, opening day was announced by a skywriter flying over the town, spelling out in smoke this catchphrase to potential customers across the city. My interest in the topic, the joy of motoring, is twofold. It stems from a curiosity about our small family business and a lifelong interest in stories of place and cultural history of 20th century Launceston. In the 1950s, Launceston was the geographical and commercial centre of Tasmania, and the automotive industry was a significant part of the city's flourishing post-World War II economy. My story of Launceston's captivation with this industry commences with G.M. Jackson, who established premises in Launceston in 1907. In my opinion, Jackson serves well as a microcosm for the development of the automotive industry and illustrates the changing and growing importance of design, advertising and salesmanship right across Australia. This well-known business name has occupied various sites in the city and elsewhere in Tasmania and embraced other companies such as Southern Motors and City Motors. Here you see their George Street building, unchanged architecturally from 1911 to this view in 1974. My father was appointed sales manager at City Motors Ford dealership in 1950. At this time, City Motors showroom and garage occupied stylish, purpose-built premises at Duncan House in Brisbane Street, Launceston. This unusual three-storey brick-rendered building was designed in 1934 by Tasmanian architect Colin Philp. It is Tasmania's first major Art Deco facade and has been described lightheartedly as one of the world's shortest skyscrapers. City Motors grew rapidly and new premises were planned in Hobart and in Devonport in the 1930s. Note the difference in the Devonport site from the proposed to the actual. In 1953, City Motors in Launceston moved from their short skyscraper to new single-storey sales and service premises in Cameron Street, again designed by Colin Philp. Dutchy Pryor, my father, saw the potential in the emerging used car market, and in 1954 left City Motors and opened his own business, Pryor's Used Cars, at 148 Elizabeth Street in Launceston. Used car yards fitted well into the market, paying cash for cars in good condition when the large new car dealer networks weren't always interested in trading. At the prime age of 39, what skills do you have for this? The family used to joke about Dale Carnegie's best-selling book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, a popular manual of self-improvement and the art of salesmanship. And I guess there may have been a copy on our bookshelves, despite the joking. He understood the importance of strong customer loyalty and built good connections, for example, with members of the local football, golf and Italian club. Customers frequently bought cars on a term payment system, so finance and insurance was another profitable part of the company. He had a close business and social relationship with the newly formed Custom Credit Corporation. This is the Pryor's used car yard soon after opening, with a line-up of not-so-new cars: Anglia Tourers, Morris, Hillman, Vauxhall and Ford Prefect. The decoration was simple. Painted oil cans contained small shrubs, and the word Pryor's and friendly service were reassuring symbols to potential buyers. My father briefly shared a partnership with Van Diemen Auto Spares and employed one salesman. This small, successful business, which from 1966 also sold new cars, continued for 40 years in our family. Competition was brisk in the vicinity of our yard, but on a grander scale with the larger local firms of Davies Proprietary Limited and Mitchell Motors. Architecture and design, outside, inside and nearby. As the importance of the look gained increasing relevance to sales, larger dealers recognised the benefits in commissioning architects to plan new buildings, with interiors and exteriors that reflected the design, style and elegance of the new car range within. In these temples of sales, the senior sales manager took on the role of high priest, confirming sales and granting finance for grateful customers. Today, Launceston retains some good examples of Art Deco buildings that were particularly constructed as showrooms and service centres, Regrettably, Hobart has lost two important examples. The Nettlefolds complex at Macquarie and Hunter Street included an impressive Art Deco corner tower, demolished in 1986. Earlier in 1960, one of the state's most sophisticated streamlined commercial buildings, Metro Motors in Argyle Street, was demolished. City Motors' 1938 Hobart building remains intact today, being adapted for other uses. Today it houses Franklin Restaurant, and the original terrazzo floor, embellished with City Motors livery, survives at the entrance as a permanent reminder of its past function as an automobile showroom. As far back as 1924, the importance of creating a sublime environment to aid sales was not lost on Alan Hughes, the Launceston representative for Lanes Motors Melbourne. He was inspired by the palatial motor showroom of their Collins Street property and hoped to do something similar in Launceston. This is the description of the end result. The first striking impression is the simplicity and delicate harmonising of a charming colour scheme of primrose and mauve arches relieved with black lines. An indirect lighting system radiates a soft, luminous atmosphere which makes the whole scheme refreshing to the eye and pleasant to the artistic temperament. At the rear of the showroom, space has been set aside for the storage of all spare parts. These are stored in a set of steel bins made to the order and special design of Lanes Motors by Steel Products of Sydney. Claude Neon's increasing presence in Launceston in the 1930s witnessed a flurry of applications for signage approvals to the Launceston City Council. Repco, for example, wanted to overlay the word Repco painted on the face of the building with red neon tubing, and also the erection of outline along the parapet for the length of the building. In 1938, the newly built Lay's Garage sought to add signage suspended 11 foot above the pavement to their building. Note the curved vitrolite stainless steel and plate glass corner window, which provided a perfect keyhole view into the bright modern showroom. This coveted corner property, designed by Roy Smith, was perfectly suited to attract the attention of both vehicle traffic and pedestrians. Inside the Hobart showrooms of Motors, soon after the new holding was launched in 1948, a distinctly Australian look prevailed, the venue being decorated appropriately with grasses, bark and trees to highlight the rugged outdoor capabilities of the vehicle, supposedly. This much anticipated event was described as a ceremony reminiscent of the launching of some giant ocean liner, the car being draped with the Australian flag. A contrasting aesthetic is reflected 6 years later at Hawthorn's showroom with a fanfare of signwriting and floral decoration surrounding the new Hudson. Throughout Australia, showrooms were often situated adjacent to garages selling spare parts and accessories. First built in 1926, the facade of the former Launceston premises of Motors still retains a decorative central panel featuring a winged wheel. The Tasmanian Tyre Service, in close proximity, displayed a large tyre atop the bold curved corner. Both buildings remain today as extant examples of Art Deco, but with new functions. By their very nature, city car yards occupied large tracts of real estate, and over time, the used car component migrated from the central commercial precincts to clusters on the edges of cities. Many of the larger companies, however, retained their new showroom centrally. Tasmanian-born Errol Stewart, current owner of Jackson Motor Company, has repurposed old buildings and refurbished them as contemporary showrooms. In 2014, he reflected on an unusual hazard of open car yards when a shipbuilder on the opposite side of the highway was spray painting a vessel. Managed to not only spray the vessel, the paint also filtered over the vehicle stock of Stewart's dealership, housed on the former site of Salisbury Foundry in Launceston. Salesman. Today, the customer is usually well informed before they enter the showroom. In the early days of selling motor cars, the salesman was not always full-time and on the floor, although he was often the sole source of much information about vehicles and life in general. Even politicians played their part in the industry. Labor Senator Aylett, mine worker and farmer, was the perfect spotter for City Motors on the northwest coast. A 1938 City Motors publication spoke of his role. Senator William Aylett still continued to do good work with the second hands, and until his ministerial duties start in June, he will continue to represent the firm. Some were born salesmen. One employee at Cooperative Motors in Hobart, who worked as a receptionist in the service department, started selling cars over the counter. By the time he'd sold over 40 cars in a month, the transfer to sales was obvious. Success came from his ability to talk to customers and in turn attract repeat sales. Contemporary accounts testify to the gendered nature of the showroom. Customers frequently paid cash, and it was the office girl's job to take the money to the bank in their handbag, fearing that if they used a briefcase or a bank bag, they would be mugged. Many different cultures have influenced sales history, as is the case with German-speaking Lamanos Christopoulos, a post-World War II migrant. Looking for work in northern Tasmania in the early 1970s, he responded to an advertisement for a sales representative for the Ford Motor Company in Devonport. In later years, he recalled the reason for his success. Those days, a lot of German migrants came in, a lot of Poles came in. The hydro was in full swing. Motors had a man who could speak German. If the opposition had somebody who could handle possible customers in their own language, the Ford Motor Company would have it too. And you know, to my surprise, I did well. When the new Cortina was released on the market, my sales record was tops. They called me Mr. Cortina. His European name presented some small difficulty. General Manager Michael Betts called him into the office and told him he would have to use a name that would be more easily recalled by the customers, and so he became Alex Christ. Of course, the salesman and sometimes the managing director copped complaints. Lloyd Jones, manager of the Aero Club of Southern Tasmania, was unhappy about the performance of his new 1957 model Holden. He complained to Motors in a letter. At 3 miles, the clutch pedal fell off. At 120 miles, the starboard front window fell down and stuck there. At 600 miles, both draft windows had lost their fasteners. At 3,000 miles, the beading was draped in a hangman's noose over each door. At 3,600 miles, one rocker arm broke off. Refer your breakdown service. He sought their advice as to what to do. Push this bitch of a car over King's Pier, find a sucker and sell it before something else breaks, bring it back and swap for a Pontiac with no adjustment, have a cup of tea and a good cry and hope the above events have been merely normal running in worries, put the engine in a saw bench, give the kids the body as a playhouse and buy a bicycle. Advertising and promotion. From the extravagant in-house showroom displays, cocktail parties and balls, slogans and jingles, all were used to announce new models and promote sales. The automotive industry has always been a trendsetter in embracing publicity through a diverse range of media to bring their cars to the people. Agricultural shows around Tasmania were an important alternative sales venue for many years. At the Launceston show in 1954, 11 of the town's main motor dealers exhibited over 100 cars, most of them painted in soft pastel shades at the time. Showroom was also an occasion for dealers to catch up at annual dinners and peruse the competition. A little-known, short-lived Tasmanian publication, The Spirit of City Motors, issued in 1937-38, is full of trade news, motivational stories and social club activities. It appears to be an early in-house magazine. The name Charles Gilmore, inscribed on the cover of the two known issues, is an indicator that as the manager of City Motors Launceston, he's likely to be the author. Commercial travellers were among the first to grasp the potential of motor cars. In Tasmania, traveller Bill Brown was one of the earliest to drive a Holden in his work for Gordon & Gotch. Representatives of Telegraph Printer in Launceston were rewarded for dedicated after-hours service when the company was sold, and they were gifted the V8 Leyland cars previously used in their work. The Australian Traveller, the CTA's monthly publication, regularly featured Holden on their cover pages in 1955 and 1956. The developing competition between Holden and Ford in the 1950s is reflected in advertising, such as in the 1955 edition of the popular and useful Universal Business Directory, Holden inside the front cover and Ford on the rear cover in bright colour. In Melbourne, both Holden and Ford used contemporary photographers Athol Smith and Helmut Newton to assist in marketing their cars. While there was nothing quite like the work of these outstanding photographers in Launceston, local photographer Doug Werrett produced a series of street corners in the 1940s, capturing several automobile dealer sites in the process. The work of local commercial photographers provides a glimpse into some car dealers' advertising strategies too. Company minute books also contain a wealth of information, including sometimes details of a little subverse activity. Under the heading Melbourne Competition in Nettlefold's minute book for 1924, Mr Jones reported that in view of his suspicion that Melbourne is selling Chevrolet cars in Tasmania, he's having prepared a list of all Chevrolet car numbers in Tasmania. It was resolved that this company subscribe to the Police Gazette at once so that all registrations of cars can be watched. As Tasmania celebrated occasions such as Jubilee Day, a royal event, and the first annual Hydrangea Festival, dealers joined in. In showroom windows and street parades, the celebrations brought forward a flourish of visual opulence and enthusiastic detail in signage, commercial art, frothy ways of fabric, and an award-winning display. And finally, the joy of motoring. In a story of mergers, takeovers, success, failure, and ever-changing franchises, nothing describes the Tasmanian story better than the book In Excellent Condition Throughout Cooperative Motors Hobart, 1913 to 2013. True to the times, their original directors were well-established local men, a merchant, insurance agent, solicitor, landowner and pastoralist. A century later, today's dealerships are more likely to be in the hands of mainland investors, and women now feature more visibly in every aspect of the automotive industry. The look of the vehicle, the showroom, the salesman and the advertising all contribute to a successful sale and ultimately the joy of motoring. This 1924 photograph of Launceston businessman Gordon Fish driving his 1923 Alfa Romeo RLS says it all. Acquired by the Queen Victoria Museum and Art Gallery in 2001, the car is notable not only for its fine original condition, but also for its radically innovative aluminium body, which was crafted in Launceston. It was the first Alfa Romeo to win a competition race in Australia, and the racing successes of Gordon Fish in 1924 were used extensively by Alfa Romeo in the company's international advertising. Thank you.
Much, Rhonda. That was a very rich paper, and I can quite see your love of archival images in that presentation, and your use of photography. Fantastic, thank you. Any questions?
Helen, sorry, it's just a comment. Whilst you've got the picture up, the RLS Alpha was actually previously owned by a member of the Automotive Historians Australia.
Andrew McDougall? Or?
No, David Rice.
Oh, right. It's had quite a long history before it came to Launceston.
I think it's a fascinating paper. Very has a lot of dimensions to it. One of the dimensions, I guess, is the fragility of the built environment and the record of the automotive industry in cities. That these buildings are being lost, and their original function is being disguised if they are retained. And there hasn't been a lot of research into their use and the history of the building type. So it's another area of fragility in our research that we really want to capture and document. So your paper is a great contribution towards that. I think it's really apt to have this history of automotive advertising following on from Ted's presentation. Where were the floral displays, Ted? Where were the floral displays in your advertisement, really?
No, we did shoot one. Oh, sorry. We did shoot that sort of scene, and it was an Indian wedding, and traditionally they cut the cars in flowers. It was an old Ford that we stuck thousands and thousands of flowers over, but unfortunately it didn't make the final edit. I often think that I could go back and make another 3 or 4 versions out of what we had left. It never happened, but yeah, we did the flowers.
Thank you. I wonder whether that floral display, in terms of promoting the vehicles, was about appealing to the female audience, or about suggesting the domesticity of the vehicle, that it's an indispensable new addition to your family, or whether it is that agricultural show thing of like the traditional displays of prize exhibits. I'm not sure, but I just find it fascinating imagery.
It was done for the first hydrangea festival. Launceston is known sarcastically as the city of the giant hydrangea. So this was the first festival they did in 1953 up there. But I've often wondered about the role of signwriters and people who stuck the flowers on the car. Was it the women? Or the signwriters? Were the boys out the back? I don't think the boys out the back. But I suspect it might have been signwriters. Maybe we did a lot of that decoration. But that other little shot of the Austin with it all covered in the glitter too. So there's definitely a thing going on in the 1950s.
That side of history is fascinating, and I think it's so diverse. Like there are a lot of different approaches towards promoting vehicles there, which I think is a separate paper within your paper that could be explored a couple of times. But I guess we must, if there's no additional questions,
Rhonda, I'm just interested if you could tell us a little bit about how you formed an interest in motoring elements following presumably your father's interest in the whole.
I didn't really know very much about it was a small business, it was a very successful one. And with lots of families, I grew up with the talk of the gossip and all that sort of thing, the big deals, the bad deals, and then my father died, then my mother died, and I had this little shoebox of, as you do, of papers. And I worked professionally as a museum curator working in archives, so I knew the ultimate, and we certainly had a very small range of things to work from. And it's been challenging because my brother-in-law worked in the company, so I've got his memory. But I wanted to sort of do a little bit of family history on my father, so that started that interest. And then because I'd worked in the museum and I'd seen all these wonderful things, and I have to say, when I went back to look for a lot of the things I'd seen, they weren't where I thought they were. Some of the best things came out of the City Council Ephemeral Collection, because the museum that I worked for was part of the City Council. And one of our archivists was going through the collection of the council and saying, this is important, this isn't, this is, this isn't. And there was a lot of stuff put aside to discard. And a lot of it were the brochures from the motoring firms, offering their Bedford Trust and things like that to the council. And I said, these are really important, we've got to keep them. And then I left and the museum downsized quite a lot, so I couldn't find a lot of the things that I knew were there. Same in archives with architectural drawings. They were held in the Launceston City Council. Now they're in the archives in Hobart, and they encourage you to look at digital copies. And it's a nightmare to sort of access all of those things. So it was really, I guess, a mixture of family interest and then a professional interest in seeing these things. And realising that no one had really written very much about the automotive or motor car industry in Tasmania. There's one very good book about it. But every firm has its own story. And I think when I go back maybe next year, I want to really try and just refine it a little bit more to get small histories, because often those people are now living in the Gold Coast or somewhere else whether they've got papers, I don't know. Certainly like to take it further.